Hey booktube, my name is the Book Mage, welcome back to my channel. Once again, it's been a while. Also, let's just pretend like you don't see a bunch of boxes around me. My shelves are in like the worst state they've ever been in. They're so disorganized. So despite the clutter and my continued absences, today I wanted to do my like October TBR. I always feel like I get like really, like I feel like I come back to life at like the death of summer. Like I'm excited for the leaves to start changing and for like spooky season to begin. It's October next month and it's like, it's my Halloween month. I'm just very here for the vibes. I'm so here for like spooky, gothic, Halloweeny sort of festivities. It's very much my thing. It also means it's finally the correct weather. It's not too hot to start wearing my beautiful billowy vampire things. I'm in my element. So yeah, I thought I would actually do like a set TBR for once, because most of the time at the moment I either just don't read at all, or like I'll try to like mood read whatever I think I can like get through. But when it comes to like spooky season, I only want to read like spooky, Halloweeny kind of books, and it's one of the few times a year that I tend to like be able to deviate from just like straight fantasy. So yeah, my TBR is going to include some like horror, some dark academia, some fantasy as well. Like without any further ado, here are the seasonal books that I'm going to be reading, hopefully fingers crossed, in October. So the first book on my October TBR is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is also the beautiful like special Waterstones edition, so I'm gonna have to be careful with it. So this is the newest book from the author of the Poppy War series, which is a series that I have started and not finished. That was like adult fantasy and pretty grimdark, if I remember. So this book does, I believe, have like some fantastical elements in it, but it is set at Oxford, and the one thing I remember about this book is the tagline. It's like, every act of translation is always an act of betrayal. So this definitely seems like dark academia to me, and I'm also assuming it's going to be potentially wonderfully gothic. I tend to love fiction when it centers around like words and languages and linguistics and that sort of thing. Like I tend to just really enjoy them. I guess it's because it's like one of my own like personal passions in life. I know I have said in the past that I tend to struggle a lot, however, when it comes to dark academia, specifically because my brain does not like anything to do with higher education unless it's like extremely like fantasy-y. I feel like this is going to be the first dark academia that is it like the first dark academia I've ever read, apart from like anything that would be a classic that you might count? I don't know. It might be. I really don't read from this genre. My mental health doesn't agree with it. But I'm making an exception for this. Everybody's been talking about this book, raving about this book. I have looked up like no reviews. I've tried to stay away from everything to just go in blind, so I'm gonna move on. The next book that I think that I might get to in October is Drowned Country by Emily Tesh. I'm not totally sure the order I'm going to read these books in, but this one feels like either like a late summer or like an early autumn kind of book to me. So this is the sequel to Silver in the Wood, which kind of followed like the typical like British like green man mythos with like a bit of a twist and a male-male romance like at the heart of it. It's really short. It's like these are tiny novellas, so I can't say much more without just like giving the whole story away. But I did enjoy that. I read that like a couple of years ago now, and I've had this sitting around, and it's so very short, and this is a continuation of the story. I don't exactly know 100% about like the full plot, but I believe this is some of like the former characters like coming back together, and they're going to a new location to like solve this like ongoing case. And at the heart of this case, I think the culprit is, at least from the synopsis or the beginning of the book, is believed to be a vampire. So you can see why I put this on my TBR. I don't know whether it will turn out to be like a typical vampire, but it feels like sinister and folklore-y, and like it gives me the vibes. It's the kind of thing that I feel like September going into October, this is like a good death of summer kind of book, you know what I mean? And it's really short, and if there is a vampire, like I kind of want to read about it. And I also kind of want to see what's going to happen with the way that some of the characters' relationships left off in the last book. I'm hoping for good things if I do get to this one. Okay, speaking of vampires, the next book, this is one that I've had kicking around for a while, and it is technically a comic, so I'm putting this like into my TBR, but I don't tend to count comics or manga or any sort of like more like visual type medium towards like my actual like TBR or reading goals or anything like that, but I thought I'd mention it anyway, and that is Interview with the Vampire, Claudia's story. So this is an adaptation of Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, which is like one of my all-time favourite books ever, and like if you're looking for a book to read this like Halloween season and you have not read Interview with the Vampire, please, oh my god, please, please, please. But yes, this is, I believe this is just Claudia's story. So Interview with the Vampire follows a man called Louis who gets turned into a vampire, and basically there is another character later in the book whose name is Claudia, and she is a child who has been turned into a vampire, and obviously therefore she doesn't like age, she's like stuck in the body of a child. It's just where a lot of the drama of the book comes from, I'll put it that way. So obviously this won't start from the very beginning of the book. This is just, I believe, the parts that include Claudia, and I believe it's told from her perspective. This is like the first page. Like the artwork in here is beautiful, and it's all like sepia toned and lovely, and it might not really count towards my reading goals just for the way that I personally do them, but I kind of wanted to give this one a shout out because I've had it around for a couple of years, and I can't reread Interview with the Vampire every year. I know I should continue like further into the series, but to be honest, I feel like this is a way to sort of like get the kick without actually having to sit down and reread the whole thing, because as much as I love that book, I have to dedicate time to other books, so I can't just read like my favourite ones over and over. I could, but as you see, I have so many to read. So putting this as a maybe on my TBR, I might include it in my wrap-up, I might not, just because I don't tend to wrap up comics, but 'tis the season to talk about it, if anything. Okay, the next book on my TBR is one that I'm kind of excited for because it's pretty different to the kind of books I would normally read. I think this is maybe the furthest away from like the standard sort of fantasy that I would generally read. However, it looks really fun and I'm really in the mood for this kind of thing, and Halloween just seems like the absolute best time of year to read this. So that is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. First of all, can I just like, I love the cover of this book. It's meant to look like an 80s like typical, I don't know, cliche horror like VHS type. Like it looks, I love it. I believe this is meant to feel like classic sort of like cliche, you know, like the whole like kids going to a cabin in the woods or like a summer camp sort of thing. It's meant to feel like very, I think, cliche sort of like maybe like some modern twists to it, not entirely sure. So yeah, I'm just looking at the synopsis, and this follows two best friends. Evening of skinny dipping happens and then one of them begins to act different. Again, what did I say with like the typical teen horror cliches? So yeah, the main character Abby starts investigating her friend's weird new behaviour, and I'm guessing it's going to be like supernatural, paranormal, that whole malarkey, and I'm expecting it to be like, yeah, kind of cliche horror, but like maybe also fun. I feel like the vibes of this just, it feels like it would be fun to read. This might, I don't really know what order I'm going to read things in. I feel like this might be the kind of thing that I try to read closer towards Halloween itself, because it just feels fun and like kind of tacky, but like in a good way, do you know what I mean? Like Halloween itself sometimes feels kind of like, just like dumb fun, but spooky, and I like that, and so I'm not 100% sure the order I'm going to do these in, but I feel like this might be like later in the month. Okay, I'm going to put this next to my York Ghost, and I think that brings us to the last book on my TBR, which I feel like this one is very appropriate for me specifically right now with my damn brainworms, and also this book is just, the aesthetic of this book is like just one of my favourite things ever. So the last book on my spooky seasonal October TBR is We Sold Our Souls, also by Grady Hendrix. So again, Grady Hendrix is not an author I've ever read by before, but I feel like sometimes when books try and be like actual, like really take yourself seriously scary, they don't scare me and they turn out bad. So sometimes, like my favourite thing sometimes is just to go into a movie being like, this is just going to be like some dumb fun, and I would probably actually really enjoy it if I just go in expecting to have fun, and that's what these kind of books feel like with their aesthetic. I kind of wanted to go into this one as blind as possible as well, because I think this one is set fairly modern day, so again, the more modern you get, the less likely I am to vibe with the book, but I vibe really hard with the cover of this book, so I'm giving it a shot. So I'm pretty sure this follows a member of a band, like a rock or a metal band that existed in like, I think it's like the 90s, but they disbanded and never really went anywhere. But I think their lead singer split from them and got like super popular, and I think the main character is sort of taking a trip back and figure out what the fuck happened there. And I'm assuming, you know, it might have things to do, I mean, with potential deals with demons or devils or the supernatural. It gives me that kind of vibe because the title is We Sold Our Souls. Yeah, this is really short. Again, it's one of those things where, as much as I love, like, live and breathe alternative music, namely like classic metal and thrash metal, they're like my absolute jam, I don't often, like, I won't really watch movies about it. I don't even really like to watch like band documentary movies or anything like that, even for the bands that I really like. It's just not my thing. There are no dragons in it. I'll watch the music videos because sometimes those have dragons, but like, that's where I draw the line. But I am interested in this, and it feels, I don't know, Halloween feels like the perfect time. I do really want to get to this like this year. I feel like if I leave this any longer, my brain worms will die off, and like, I can't have that. It just gives me absolute vibes. The back says, metal never retreats, metal never surrenders, metal never dies. Please, it's going on my TBR. So there we go, the 5 seasonal spooky books on my TBR. I feel like I've got some good range, you know. We've got dark academia, vampires, like 80s horror kind of stuff, and maybe just like general horror. I feel like I've got a wide range, and this is the most that I've set myself to read for quite a while, so I don't really want to push it by adding more. So with that said, wish me luck. I probably need it because I've not been reading that much lately. And yes, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see if I ever manage to properly resurrect this channel. Who knows? Hopefully you guys have found this entertaining, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!